when I was down in Westminster, I was expecting it to be more, right, you're going to be talking to a couple of technical colleges or like maybe some school leavers initially. I wasn't expecting the baptism of fire as you're addressing the House of Lords, like members of the House of Lords and members of Parliament, and you're like, out of 3 speakers that are being invited to speak at this private event, like you're one of them. The other 2 have 30 years in industry and have owned like large multi-billion pound companies. In the time that I'm home, I've predominantly been sort of the primary caregiver during the week a lot of the time because my wife's working, and it's just the most rewarding thing and fantastic thing. And although for someone that's never done it, that sounds really difficult, but as soon as you're 1 or 2 days in, especially if you've got like a reasonable level of self-discipline, it's not just easy, you feel so much better for it. You actually feel like you have more energy from it.
Hello and welcome to WS Podcast. My name is Wojtek, as per usual, still the same. And I have my friend Niall here with me.
Hello.
He's a gentleman that I met at Jiu-Jitsu at Low Tide in Edinburgh. And I have some, as we started talking before, we have some preconceived notions of ourselves, but of course it's through the lens of this, sparring,
no need
chatting
within a jiu-jitsu context.
Exactly. And we've talked. It's funny because you get to talk with people in between rounds or at the beginning of the session or whatever, but there is only so much time.
Of course.
So it's interesting how we choose that time, in terms of what did I share with you, what did you share with me. I know that you have a daughter, I know that you have a wife, you know that I have a wife, you know that I work for a corporation, you know that I'm from Poland. But all these different things, while we've delved into some bits and pieces here and there, we've not really had a chance to talk longer. And so I thought it might be beneficial for us all to hear Niall's story. He works as an electrician, right?
Well, many years ago I trained as an electrician, but that's not really what my job is now. It's something sort of different.
Okay, so but you work at an oil rig still, right?
No, I've actually
This is very fresh then.
Yeah, well, the last year I've been involved within renewable energy.
Okay, cool.
So I'm now, after 13 years in oil and gas, working a lot of time overseas initially, and then the last sort of 10 years in the North Sea. For the last year I've transitioned across into renewable energy, and I'm now working on the world's largest offshore wind farm. I've been doing a lot of training, dotting about a few different countries, and I'm now based on a big project off the east coast of England called
and that's the biggest.
It's the biggest offshore wind farm in the world. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's 6 vessels that serve that wind farm, effectively ships with around about 100 guys on each of them. And I'm now in charge of one of the vessels. I'm the service lead, SOV manager. So you're effectively like organising the day-to-day running of trying to get this, or at least a sixth of this wind farm up and running, setting the guys to work day-to-day, managing people, managing problems, managing everything else that comes with it. So a lot of technical acumen is required, but also a lot of, I think, predominantly within a sort of managerial role, it's to do with human factors and managing people, expectations, emotions, the balance between rest time and work time, and everything else that comes with it. So some really big changes over the last year.
That's a huge thing for you as well.
It's been massive, man. And what happened was about a year ago, I mean, it might actually be a year ago to this month, I moved across and was part of this pilot scheme that was being run by the Engineering Construction Industry Training Board. They look after the sort of the frameworks by which engineering employed people within heavy industry have to work towards. So effectively the standards of training that keep them safe. And because there's such a sea change happening within the energy industry in the UK, there was a big focus on being able to facilitate guys that have got demonstrated significant experience working within oil and gas and moving them across to the renewable industry, because so many of the skills are transferable. There's certain things you're expanding on, certain aspects of the trade you're potentially reducing on, but there's undoubtedly many behaviours and many technical aspects are similar, so it makes sense, especially in the change that's happening. So I did this this pilot scheme that ran for 6 weeks, gave me a load of cross-discipline awareness, and then started on the project where I now am. I went in as the electrical commissioning lead. Then after 8 months there, moved across to the industry leader Vestas, where I did another bunch of training for 6 months, and then I had a conversation with GE, who are running this large project I'm on, and they've brought me back in as service lead, so that's the position I'm now in. And then on top of that, it's been a really crazy year, because the ECITB that ran this course, they have a scheme for guys who are looking to be sort of like future leaders within the construction and engineering industry within Britain, and they've got a panel called Innovate, which is made up of 8 people, cross-sector within the industries that they represent, and I was asked to be part of it for a cohort that just started, so I'm now part of that with the ECITB, which is amazing, and I've had loads of opportunity to do some cool stuff. I was down in January. I was in Westminster addressing MPs and members of the House of Lords and a bunch of industry leaders, encouraging them to look at the development of programmes like the one I was on, and being able to sort of like address the strategies that they're going to need to implement to allow the guys from traditional offshore oil and gas industries to move across to renewable. And then I've just had another couple of conversations this week with them. They're wanting me to take part in the webinar in June, so I'm going to be addressing Scottish Renewables, who are the head of renewable energy for Scotland, and they deal with a lot of the contract for difference and the legal frameworks around how we're going to build these offshore wind farms. And also I'm going to be doing some stuff with the ECITB, where they're wanting me to take part in some videos encouraging oil and gas workers to take part in schemes that they're about to be rolling out en masse on the back of the success of the programme I took part in. Yeah. So it has actually been a crazy year, but to answer your question, I did train as an electrician, yeah. But my job has sort of changed and developed, and I've found some like really positive steps over the last sort of 12 months. So it's been a year of strategic and quick growth. Yeah, it really has been, man.
How do you feel? We'll come back to the oil rigs and stuff, which I thought is going to be the most interesting part. How are you feeling about the shift to much more facing public speaking role? Because I can assume that you've been through your career long enough to have been a leader, otherwise you wouldn't be in the position you are in right now. But from what you just said about addressing Westminster people and participating in a whole campaign of unrolling this, how does it make you feel? Like, have you ever thought that this is going to be the space for you?
I do. Well, tell you what happened. The oil and gas industry served me really, really well, man. It did. A great grounding, a great work-life balance, afforded me lots of time off to spend some amazing years with my daughter, to renovate her house, to have lots of me time as well on top of that. That was fantastic. But I don't know if you might well know about it because we've maybe spoken, but I took really unwell last year. I had an awful asthma attack. It turned out I had pneumonia and a bacterial infection and ended up in hospital for a few days. And it was just like, I was in the hospital. It was actually the hospital that I had to take you to the time that you hurt yourself, or I hurt you, jiu-jitsu, which I'm very sorry for. But when I was in bed those few days, I was just thinking to myself, I should be going back to work. I'm not at work. I'm in this hospital bed. What should I do? And it just got me thinking, and I thought it's really time for a change. So that's when I started thinking, like, let me think about this strategically. What does the next part of my career look like? And obviously the renewable energy makes so much sense for guys, blah blah blah, that are in that situation. Of the demise of that industry and the exponential growth of the offshore wind market. But I did sort of feel within, when I was reconciling it, that no like real change in terms of what my day-to-day looks like is going to happen unless I enforce it myself. So I sort of just had a bit of a chat to myself and thought, like, what do I really want the future to look like? And I think, like, genuinely positive visualization and like self-belief and really driving myself towards the goals been like something that I have been able to manifest. And how I feel, to answer your question about doing more sort of public speaking and things maybe at more of a strategic level, like, it's a big part of the job anyway, by virtue of the fact it's all to do with communication. When you're within an offshore industry and you're dealing with guys in a technical setting, a lot of that is to do with communication, because you're always trying to mitigate against risk. But you are talking about things in a more ethereal sense when you're doing it in a public sort of setting. But I think the ECITB, who I'm doing this sort of voluntary role with in the Innovate Board, they kind of recognised with me that I'm someone that is good at doing that, and not everyone is, but like I'm happy doing it. I love helping people, man. Like, people always refer to me as a Niall Gibb recruitment agency when I'm offshore, because I'm always getting guys jobs. I'm always trying to bring my own team, the guys that I know work well, onto a project with me. I've done it forever, and I'll probably continue to keep doing it. So it's not something that has particularly fazed me. But I mean, when I joined the Innovate Board, I was expecting to do some public speaking, and I sort of joked about that when I was down in Westminster. I was expecting it to be more, right, you're going to be talking to a couple of technical colleges or like maybe some school leavers initially. I wasn't expecting the baptism of fire as you're addressing the House of Lords, like members of the House of Lords and members of Parliament, and you're like, out of 3 speakers that are being invited to speak at this private event, like, you're one of them. The other 2 have 30 years in industry and have owned like large multi-billion pound companies. So yeah, it was amazing, but I feel like I've probably taken it reasonably well in my stride.
I think you're a perfect case for them, especially for that whole program of enrolling guys from oil and gas industry into renewables, because you've walked that path for however short. You know, you're like a poster boy essentially for them. While you have all the technical acumen and the experience, you're also a case study for, hey guys, this works. I can do it. You can do it too. Yeah,
and I think the difficulty with things is always to do with the way it's communicated, and I think being able to bring things down to it's fine communicating this to someone that runs a company and trying to tell them this is why you should do this, but it's another thing getting to the guys that are actually going to be performing the work on the workforce and allowing them to understand in layman's terms what the benefits of doing this is and how it can potentially project your career to be extended without worry, and afford yourself the same socio-economic like level of lifestyle by transitioning into this new and upcoming industry, rather than being like perpetually worried about what the rest of the future of your career looks like by staying stagnant within oil and gas. So
sure.
And it is, because man, that was a real worry, like the last while in oil and gas, because it's just getting decimated, regardless of where you stand on that side of the fence, whether you think it's right or wrong. I think that fact itself is kind of irrefutable. Because, you know, it seems to me that, and I'm no expert, it's just from observation and maybe, you know, watching some podcasts or reading a few books, it's not obvious for me that the transition between oil and gas and renewables is going to happen as instantaneously as it first was advertised. So while I'm pretty sure that, you know, it's a slowly, gradually, and then suddenly, it seems to me that there is still time for the oil and gas workers and companies to adapt to that shift. Yeah. How do you see it from your perspective? I know what you mean. I kind of understand what it is you're articulating there. I think a couple of things at play. I mean, first off, so you have the companies. This company A produces hydrocarbons. Company B produces electricity through means of wind power. Mm-hmm. But and there's a bunch of employees here and a bunch of employees here. But like company A aren't going to facilitate their employees to move to the wind industry upon their assets ceasing production. So this is where
I see what you mean.
This is where the kind of frameworks come in and allowing guys to be at a point that they are fully skilled to be able to do it, and there's going to continue to be like enormous demand for hydrocarbons. Absolutely, that's undeniable. But what's also undeniable is that the production rates, you can view the graphs online, for hydrocarbon production in the North Sea on UK owned assets is going to continue to drastically drop over a very short period of time. So that's not to say that the hydrocarbons aren't required, but the production internally from our country is going to definitely increasingly decrease.
Are there some, because for example, one thing that popped into my mind straight away is, you know, if we are in an environment where company B, which is doing renewable stuff, is getting all kinds of, you know, tax advantages, subsidies, support programs and stuff to essentially make it grow over time or at least maintain its capacity, while the potentially carbohydrate company A isn't, then that is already putting those on the boat A at a disadvantage over the long term.
Yeah, it does feel that way. It does.
Is that also the case? Why? What I mean is, like, is it that we're just running out in the UK of carbohydrate to dig out?
No, or is there, not that we're running out.
Is there the regulation and all that is making the change?
It's like, it's the same as anything. It's imagine just you're an oil company. You're going to go to where the cheapest cost centre is by and large, and you see it within the financial industry. You see it within manufacturing industry. You see it within everything. It's to do with the cost centres, and there's so many more places where it's more abundant and it's cheaper to take it out of the ground with less red tape, which makes complete sense if you're a large corporation looking to maximise profits.
Okay, I see. So that's also the case that in this imaginary, non-imaginary world, over time, what we're experiencing is, since Team B is likely to increase its capacity while Team A is being squeezed, over time, Team A will need to find a way to get out. And that's where the bridge of the programs that you're trying to promote.
Exactly, yeah, and that's and like the guys that are putting that together are hoping it for it to be a recognised standard that market leading turbine manufacturers are going to be adopting as a stream for recruitment. They are hoping that's what the hope is, and that's what makes sense in my mind, because you've got known quantities of men or employees who can work in an offshore setting for prolonged periods of time, and it's like that's the technical aspect of the job. That's almost a prerequisite. You need to have that. So you obviously need to have some sort of technical acumen that's recognised to be able to work in the environment, but in the position. But to be able to deal with the environment is another thing altogether. So can you work 14, 20, 128 days straight, 12-hour days on the bounce? Well, here's a pool of people that you know are capable of that because they've already got years of experience of doing it.
Let's turn to that experience now, okay? Because you've already sort of alluded to the interesting aspect, which I don't think many people actually are aware of, that the way you worked on the in the capacity of working on the offshore oil rigs before, and I assume it's very similar currently on the vessel. You're essentially in deployment, one can say. Yeah. And you're away for how many months?
Well, generally speaking, the last while it's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off within the wind industry. For quite a while in the oil and gas industry, I was doing 2 weeks on, 3 weeks off, which was amazing because that's so much time that it's a 40% of the year that you're working, which really is fantastic. Sometimes doing 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, but when I was working overseas, when I initially started working within oil and gas, I would do 6 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And that killed you.
That's like, a bit
that's
long.
Unsustainable. Yeah. Like every guy I met that had done that. Like I was a young boy when I went across, but all the guys I was meeting who'd been doing that for years, they were all on their second or third wife. Like that's a miserable existence.
Yeah,
for anyone.
I see what you mean, because it's very difficult to maintain 6 weeks of
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your, let's go back in time a little bit, although you can also dot here and there your current employment. I'm curious, how does an usual day on the oil rig looks like for you? You're going for those 2 weeks, let's say. How those days looks like? What can you do there? What do you do there apart from working? How does work look like?
Sure. Well, I mean, you're working. Generally speaking, you're working 12-hour days. If it's a shit show, you might be working 14, 15-hour days. But generally speaking, it'll be 12-hour days. So you start the day, depending where you are, at 6 or 7. You'll get down and have a meeting with whichever team you're part of. So you might be leading that team. You might be a part of the team. You might be planning for some other work coming up, and then it's a case of getting everything within the industry is to do with risk mitigation, because obviously if something goes wrong, it can go really wrong and you're 100 miles from land. It's a big problem. So it's all to do with risk mitigation. So we're always ensuring that our work that we're going to be conducting is the risks taken down to a level that's as low as reasonably possible that anything can go wrong. And then it's a case of sort of seeing the work through. So it could be any number of things. I could be working on high voltage switchgear, addressing a fault that's preventing us from being able to run some 3.3 kV pumps, for instance, that drive water into a reservoir to push oil back up to displace oil effectively. Or it might be something more innocuous. It might be ensuring that our gas detection system is all fully functioning, which will mean going through checking electrical signals and doing physical checks of all the equipment. There could be thousands of them across the platform, placed strategically depending on the condition of the pipework. So it'll be a lot of hours doing something like this. We'll usually work for 5 or 6 hours and then take a break. So that for me was, I would try, generally speaking, I would try and train twice a day. So I would do weight training at midday for an hour. Gym's brilliant. By the time we were going off, our dumbbells were up to 50 kilos. So like it suited me down to the ground. I would just, you know what I'm like, I love weightlifting, mate. So I would do an hour's worth of weightlifting, usually with my mate, as long as we were on the same shift. And then the second half of the day, it's rinse and repeat, really. You're back to getting the work done, and like some of the stuff's a bit cleaner and tidier, but some of the stuff you're in with the woods, and it kind of is similar to what you see in the films. After that, end of the day, I would get on the treadmill for a while, or maybe do some other sort of cardiovascular, usually treadmill, half an hour in a sauna, to bed, and then it's just rinse and repeat like that for 14 days straight, man.
And is that very similar on the vessel right now? Really
similar, mate. Yeah, the only difference is that
you get out to work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And like the cut-offs, the way that it works within the wind industry, a lot of the work is dependent upon the wave height. So if the wave height within the basin where you're working is above 1.5 metres, we're not able to connect to the turbines. So I've also not been in the industry that long, but the conversations that I've been having with the guys is saying that a lot of the months throughout winter, the work can be quite stop-start, which can be amazing for guys as well. Nobody wants to be outside in minus however many degrees in the middle of the North Sea. So I think when the guys are getting a bit of time off, that are off, because if you're out with what's a safe condition to be able to connect to a turbine, you're off. But the new vessels that we're on, they're amazing. They're like floating hotels. Like the accommodation is great. The gyms are like a lovely gym that you would pay a membership to here quite happily. So like that side of it is really moved with the times within this industry that I'm now in versus the oil and gas industry, where you were dealing with infrastructure that was from 1970s, 1980s, and it was very quite industrial feeling and was just there to serve a purpose. The renewable industry with the newer vessels, these things are like, some of them have just launched this year, some last year. They're there to deal with the comforts of modern life slightly better, albeit you're still in the middle of the ocean bopping about on a little boat. So.
And how does it work in terms of, I assume to the oil rigs before, you would fly in a helicopter?
Yeah, whereas this one you dock, so it docks every 2 weeks. It comes up back onto land, docks. Everything changes over. Crew will change over, captain may change over, all the personnel will change over, and then you go back. So where you would see some new faces pop up in the oil and gas industry throughout your tenure of your trip, because guys would constantly be rotating. Here you're out with your family for 2 weeks and then you're back, and that doesn't really change.
And one more question about these things before we go any further is like, in terms of the time that you spend right now, you said that the vessel is somewhat of a hotel. Are there other entertainment things on the boat apart from the gym?
Yeah, sauna? They have some
cinema. I don't know.
They do. They've got cinema. They've got some recreation rooms. They've got like dartboards and stuff. But like, man, if you've got the time to be in there when the weather's bad because the ship's moving around like playing darts in a 4 or 5 metre swim, like you end up hitting your mate with a dart. So it isn't like they're there, but
of course.
Yeah. But I think a lot of guys spend a lot of time lying in their bed catching up on TV series, man. Which
I guess it also makes sense that, especially in such such an intense job, when you're on the job, time off really becomes.
It does,
time
man.
off.
Yeah, especially it's like with anything, but it's the cumulative effect as well. Because although 2 weeks is a reasonably short period, but 2 weeks of 12 hours, it does like that gets you, and you're trying to get 8 hours sleep, and if you've been doing hard labour as well, and that's like a killer. So yeah, guys like to take their time off. Room rats, you get called. Like that's what they sort of call a guy that doesn't come out of the room after shift, a room rat. But there's like a lot of that offshore, because by the time you're done, you're done.
And you said this is the biggest European or in the world?
Biggest in the world just now, yeah. Biggest offshore wind farm in the world, and biggest by in terms of the amount of gigawatts of power that it's going to produce.
Okay. And is that something? I just don't know anything about it. Is that something fairly new?
Offshore wind's been around for a long time, but the turbines themselves have just, the scale is just off the charts now. The scale that they can produce is just, so the turbines that we are working with can produce 13 megawatts, which is how many houses that would power, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but it's enormous, and there's 300 of these things going up. So like, it really is, and when you're on the boat, you look out, you can do a 360 of the horizon, and you're not seeing close to all the turbines, and that's the horizon, 360 degrees round. It's just
and
the whole area.
How many are you, because you said there are a bunch of vessels there, is there a particular number of turbines that your vessel is responsible for?
No, because it goes through phases.
Depending on the circumstance, you just know where to go.
Yeah, and it's because it's a project that's still at this point in time in both a construction and a commissioning phase. It's not all operational yet. The certain vessels will be attributed to like the foundational construction. Other folk will be put towards commissioning, bringing these things online, and then there's other vessels like the one I'm on where we're looking at, okay, the stuff's constructed, the turbine's online, but there's reactive maintenance that's needing to be done on that, so we'll dive in and try and take care of that as and when it's required.
And okay, one last question and then we go to the family for a moment. Did you have to do, like, are there any particular special training checks to ensure that people can withstand such a job? I mean, in terms of, being offshore for so long, do you have to have some sailors level?
No, that's one of the.
How do they?
There's so many like different aspects of training you have to go through. to work offshore. There's obviously like prerequisite technical training depending on what your job's going to be. And then on top of that, there's prerequisite safety training. So like you have to basically have a box tick to say that you've done all the training that allows you to like safely put out a fire if it starts as per what the company procedure is, and you're able to ditch in a helicopter, or you're able to like safely escape from a set of circumstances into water. And that's all prerequisite training that is like industry led by GWO, who are the Global Wind Organisation, and they'll sign off to say, okay, it's fine for you to do that, you've done this training. But there actually isn't a check in place, and there's obviously medical training as well, but there isn't a check in place anywhere that says I am happy to work for X amount of time for these amount of days. It's sort of incumbent on the individual who's putting themselves forward to do that job, to make sure that they're fit to do it. So a bit of a baptism by fire if you're not used to it.
Sure.
Because most people will go their whole working life without having to do those amounts of hours consecutively in a workplace setting. Don't get us wrong, everyone's busy in their own right, and like there's so many other aspects of life that can feel like work sometimes, but like to actually be like the expectation is that you see these 12 hours through and you do that rinse and repeat for 14 days straight. That's a reasonably unusual setting, but there isn't any check in place to make sure that people are able to do that. They sort of have to find out for themselves.
So what was the biggest, or what is maybe the biggest challenge for you in your job?
I think because it's changed so much over the shortest, a reasonably short period of time, I think a big change for me will be probably I think it will be more of a technical challenge in terms of the principles for all wind turbines are largely the same. There's wind that pushes blades that produces power, and we export that power. But every turbine does it differently, and I think ultimately the biggest challenge is just getting to a place where I'm happy with all the technical aspects of that, because I feel like the human factor stuff of managing people, managing work scopes, deliberating over situations like that, and that require more soft skills and organisation, they're things that I've done for years anyway. But it's the technical aspect is the bit that you need to try and learn quickly and accurately. So I think that probably is the biggest challenge for me at this point in time. But we'll get there.
Yeah, sure. I have no doubt. No, for sure. So I have some ideas for other questions, but I really would like to follow up on what you said earlier, which is really interesting as well for me, from the standpoint of many of my listeners are like myself or slightly younger. Some of them might be considering going into a job right now. Maybe some of them are already in like their first career, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's something that this work and life balance really strikes me as a challenge in our usual, the way I work, for example, a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's not something that you have to deal with in your job. So as you said, you're away for 2 weeks, but then you're with the family for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Was that something that you've considered as a big part of why you went for the job, or did it just pop up and then you made it work? Like, how was that experience for you as well? I'm pretty sure you're going to say that you've been blessed with it, because like,
I think so. Like,
especially with the family.
I always wanted to work offshore because my uncle and my cousin worked offshore, and I wouldn't see them all the time, but when I did see them, I never felt like there was any job that I was particularly drawn to, and other than when I chatted to those guys, because it always just sounded fantastic, because they never seemed too stressed when I was with them. But I suppose it's because they didn't carry the stress of their job with them, because they leave it at the door for several weeks, so I only ever saw them at their best. And so that's kind of what encouraged me to want to do that job. I remember my cousin's advice to me was, if you're going to work offshore, get a trade, because it'll make things so much easier for you. So I followed his advice on that, and that's what I did. And then very soon after getting my trade qualification, I did go into the oil and gas industry. But I didn't think academia ever really suited me. I did 6 months at university. accountancy at University of Dundee, and could you imagine me as an accountant? Like, the idea is sort of ludicrous, isn't it? Because it just wouldn't have suited me. But since working rotationally, the balance is just, it really does work. Like for us, with my wife and I and my daughter, it's afforded me the opportunity to be able to like spend so much time with her growing up. When just before she was born, we renovated her second property. I did the first one, and the second one I did even more of it, like turned my hand to just about every trade. But I was afforded the time to be able to do it because I had 3 weeks off at the time, which was fantastic. So in that regard, it served me well. And in the intervening years since, that's my daughter turning 6 in a few months. It's just from after a year of my wife being off work, from the year like 1 onwards, in the time that I'm home, I've predominantly been sort of the primary caregiver during the week a lot of the time because my wife's working, and it's just the most rewarding thing and fantastic thing. And although you miss your family terribly when you're away, of course you do. Absence does make the heart grow fonder, and the relationship I've got, obviously with my wife, but with my daughter as well. Like it is sad for her when I go away, but we really are like, you've never met a father and daughter that are closer and that play so much together. And it's just, I do see it as a blessing. I really do. I mean, would you want to do it forever? I don't know, but my wife always says she would be demented if I had a 9 to 5 because it wouldn't suit me. And I think there are certain guys that are probably drawn to that kind of work, like what I do, because either consciously or unconsciously it sort of suits the way that they operate.
Well, it does make you think about the leaving the job at the door thing, and I think that plays a huge role in the quality of relationship that you end up developing. Because if you work 9 to 5 and your partner works 9 to 5, or maybe different shifts, but still, and yet the work can be performed at home, which predominantly many of the jobs nowadays can be.
You're never
for
off.
the most part. Exactly. And then like you're not only never off in terms of you're always available to work, but also your mind and however you want to say it, your energy can always be mixed. Tainted
it is, man. I know.
With that, maybe one more thing I can do.
Exactly.
And you're not fully there.
And it's like there really isn't any off switch, and I feel that like for my wife, because she's back at work full time, but it's not just full time. It's beyond full time, because an email can come through to her mobile at any point in time. She can be on holiday, she can be off, it can be the weekend, whatever. And because you're bought into the success of your team, and it's incumbent on you to constantly be managing things, especially at the level that she is. You actually are never off from it, and that's not how we were designed, man. Or at least that's my kind of theory on it. That for me would probably not jar well with how I like to operate. The idea that my work and my time off are siloed from one another suits me, and is worth the payoff. Not that it would be for everyone, but yeah, the never been off thing it's a problem, and I think you see how it's manifest, and I think everyone kind of recognises that.
Well, it's nothing new in a sense that even just after COVID, when the whole wave of switching to office work from home came about, very early on I was introduced to all these ideas of like, make sure that you have a separate room for the office, that you don't work in your bed or you don't work in your living room. And the challenge here is you need to have the self-discipline and the space to facilitate that, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to have a space in your house for the vessel on which you work.
Of course.
Because it's just not there. Whereas for myself, if I do work at home, unless I do have that space, I'm even more prone to get myself in the bad mood over the email, or working overtime when I don't necessarily need to. It is a big challenge. I would say it's a challenge, particularly on the side of whoever is the one working.
Of course, I think the work from home thing, I think it's just a racket anyway, man, because there's just so much that's lost and so many benefits you don't see from working from home, and it's all to do with the cost of the human interaction, and that's that's just so much of your development happens from the way that you're able to navigate situations that you deal with in person. I don't like the idea. Obviously, like a job, for instance, one like you do, where you're 95% of what you're doing is going to be on a computer. Even when you're communicating in meetings, it's still going to predominantly be through that. But being within the vicinity of everyone else, where you can have that time, and bonds can be forged. So much of that is lost just being at a computer, that if you're doing it in a silo from your apartment or whatever your home domicile is. It's just, it's such a disservice to the workforce for that to have been something that's been widely rolled out by companies as an appropriate way to work, in my mind.
I agree in a sense that I feel ironically, while some part of me is oh no, but you like when you're at home, because you can put on the laundry while you're, typing out an email or whatever. I do resonate with the idea that not only is the company missing out on my performance potentially, because it's going to take me slightly longer to do something, because I cannot just nudge my mate and be oh, can you just send me that? Yeah, thanks. But also, it is very likely that it might hinder over the long term, or in short term as well, if you're having a stressful day, your relationship with your partner, let's say,
environment,
whoever,
and everything,
or flatmate, or your daughter, your wife and stuff. Because, and yet again, this is the challenge, right? If we work at home, it's wonderful for me to be working from home when Julia's here and we just sit together. But it is not as good a quality time,
of course,
as if I wasn't working.
So there's an element that feels as though it should be the same, because there's an element where the expectation subconsciously is that it possibly should be the same, because you're physically in the same space as one another, but you can't be, because your eyes half on the job, your eyes half on what you guys are talking about or whatever. Don't get me wrong, I think a balance between the two is the ideal situation for a lot of folk, but I think that probably works well, the option to have some time working from home. But all of it, there's if that's what you're doing all the time, I just can't help but feel that there's going to be elements of personal growth that are going to completely fall off from that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even from my experience, I've had a period of time while I was studying, when I worked from home fully at a charity, which was just all we did was online. It was post-COVID, so there was no problem whatsoever. And one of my friends from work was from India, the other one was living in Ireland, the other guy was in Poland. It was very online heavy.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm talking about myself at a point in time when not only do I have a girlfriend, I also have an established connection of friends in the city.
Of course.
I have stuff to do. So I wasn't as much suffering from the isolation, as I could have. But I can imagine that for someone who's just starting out on their career, potentially, let's say that they've only done uni and God forbid they did uni online because of the pandemic or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that's what your experience is. You have no option, no chance
man.
whatsoever.
It's such a disservice
to make the relationships, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess it's very similar with screens, That's why they say, and I believe yourself, such as me, we try to practice it. Put the phone away when you're having a meal with your family.
Of course.
The screen is a screen. It's just a distraction.
Yeah, we're trying to limit our daughter's exposure to one is until there will be a point in time that if you don't have access to one, you'll be left behind, and that's But I think
it's a difficult.
It is. I can't help but think though that it's finally getting the kind of eyes at a legislative level that there will have to be things that are enforced in the medium term that will prevent the generations that are coming through from like being so unbelievably addicted to them, because everyone understands how big a problem it is. But there's been a total disservice to like the sort of like teenagers through to 19-20-year-olds. Like they've just been fed a really bad run, I think, through COVID, and then the advent of those things just becoming so like popular, within like modern culture.
Have you had a chance to read Anxious Generation?
No,
by Jonathan Haidt?
No, I've not.
I think I'll send it over after our discussion. I'll send you a link. I think it's an important book to read about that topic when it comes to your kid.
Sure.
He basically just talks and like goes through studies about how screen exposure at different stages affect people, because now we have the studies already, because there is enough people.
I know, and the mad thing is the studies are that the information that you're getting from them is already quite profound, and you're still in the infancy of it.
Oh, yeah.
So like you imagine in a generation's time. I did read an amazing book a couple of years ago called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, and it was about the advent of how information has been communicated over the years and how quickly information can be communicated, and it starts from way back when and it goes through all the different stages of which, and I mean this is a book from like the 70s and 80s, and kind of the essence of it is that he argues that people say that we're living in 1984 these days, and he says we're going to be living in 1984, and he says we're not, we're going to be living in Brave New World, which is a much scarier reality. And I think he's probably right, because everyone is amused to death. Like you can't bear to have a second where you don't have some sort of information you're consuming. It's like it really is, I don't know, man, it's crazy, and yet there's never enough either. But then that's where like some self-control is necessary and some sort of self-discipline, and I think having like routines and habits and things that are important to you, that you do every day, is something that can allow you to overcome aspects of that for periods of your life. And that's, for me, the biggest thing is exercise, which, I'm probably addicted to exercise. Like I love it so much, but I think that's like a great opportunity to absolve yourself of any need for any technology for a period of time.
Yeah, no, and we can talk about that for sure. Just my final note on the point of your daughter and stuff is like, I'm pretty sure the only way out of this for our kids going forward, if God blesses me with some as well, is you have to show by your own action how to act, right? And this is where the habits and all of that comes into play. Like if we will rely on the state or the government or the school or the society at large to decide what the child will be doing, they will be screwed.
Of course.
But since you are the biggest stakeholder in your child's future, you'll just do all you can to make it it work. And let's jump for a little bit at least to tickle the fancy of all our jiu-jitsu friends into sports and jiu-jitsu. Because first of all, why did you start jiu-jitsu? That's always a fun one.
Well, I tell you, man.
Because you started when I did.
Yeah, I started when you did. I fucking messaged Simon a year prior to that on Instagram when I still had it, and he didn't respond. And I messaged a couple of times, he didn't. And then eventually, after reading some article on when I was glued to my phone, I think, you know what it was? It was Tom Hardy competing in a competition. I was like, man, I'd messaged the club a couple of times about this. Let me message him again. He was like, right, okay, why don't you come along to the club? But I mean, fundamentally, the reason I started it was, I'm not from Edinburgh originally. My wife and I are from Dundee, and I moved through when I started working away because my wife had got a job with BlackRock, and for me it didn't matter where I lived because I worked remotely, because it was always on rotation. But in coming from a different city and not having any ties to work in the city, it's super difficult to meet folk, man. Like, because that's just...
Where do you meet people?
Exactly. I'm not going to meet people on the day-to-day. And we've been here a few years, and we still spent a lot of time going back to Dundee and having people through to meet us, and we got to know some folk through my wife's work. But it really, because by the time I joined, I just had my daughter. She was like 9 months old or something like that. I was sort of like, you know what, I really, like, we're putting down roots here, and we're really establishing. I need to find a way where I'm going to increase sort of my social circle, and that was fundamentally the reason that I joined, because I did like so much exercise all the time anyway. I was weightlifting, I was doing like loads of yoga at that point in time as well. But you don't meet people in the same way. So that was fundamentally the reason that I started, and then from there I just really started enjoying it, man. So, and that's been what, 3.5, 4 years, something like that.
It's been 4 or 5 even.
Is it? Say. Okay, yeah.
2021, right?
Yeah. So a while now.
And you said you started in jiu-jitsu because. Like the idea of jiu-jitsu popped up because Tom Hardy participated in the competition.
Yeah, it's so he competed in one. I was like, man, I'm sure I've messaged the club about this a couple of times. I hadn't heard back, and then that popped up. It's like, I'm going to message him again. Simon said come along, so went to a bunch of the sort of beginner classes, and then since then it's just been great, and it's amazing seeing the club grow and then get to make loads of mates at the club, and like I don't leave the house now without seeing someone that I know from the club, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, plus I do believe we really got dealt a good card with that particular club as well. Like, I think not too many other clubs, but it seems to me that, you know, looking for a community, you've definitely hit the jackpot in that regard. Yeah,
like I think there's some murder practice you could go to if that's like what you're seen as, and you could really be doing that sort of thing. But like, it really gels well with what I would like from for like a club like that to be for me, and that's something that I think that it really does exemplify. And I've travelled obviously quite a bit with work over the last year, and whenever I'm in a new city I go to a club, and obviously because you're not part of the fold, you're maybe not experiencing the culture in the same way. But one thing I can say is it's not the feeling of what I get, the atmosphere from other clubs that I've been to, and I've been to loads of clubs around Scotland and in North East England, it isn't quite the same as what it is. There's no place like home, you know what I mean? Sure,
no, for sure. And you know, you said about the self-discipline and like habits and stuff, and this is definitely a big part of my show overall when I talk about different things, how to improve essentially your standing, whatever you want to do in life.
Yeah.
And it's not obvious for me that many people, especially nowadays, young people, manage to get the healthy habits, or at least maybe because they don't know what their habits could be, or maybe because they don't have that, you know, drive, consistency, whatever you want to call it. And I just wonder, like, what made you be so focused on your habits? And you mentioned earlier, like visualizing, kind of strategizing your, basically making a vision for yourself for the future.
Yeah.
Is that something that you came about because someone showed you the ropes, or did you just imitate, or maybe you read some book? Like, how did you go about that?
I think, like, my wife always jokes that if I don't exercise, it's a disaster, so she'll send me out of the house like to go for a run or to go to a class or to go to the gym, because I'm insufferable to be around if I haven't exercised. But it's like you see the picture of the horse before exercise and the unicorn afterwards. So like that's kind of, well, I'm not saying I'm every unicorn, but like that's like that's I'm definitely the best version of myself when I do. I mean,
when did you start doing
difficult to answer, but I've weight trained since I was 16, and I'm about to turn 38.
Consistently, without a stop since.
I mean, I've so that's almost 22 years, and I've definitely missed the odd week, but I've never missed a month, and I've rarely missed a week. And within the weeks, I don't tend to miss too many days. So like
what you're saying is, apart from sleeping, you've spent the last 22 years of your life.
I spent a lot of time, man. But the thing is, I love that, and like the most of the time, I mean, the first 15 years or so of doing that, it was predominantly weightlifting, and like I've always loved that, and like still my like strength to body weight ratio would still put me in top 1% of lifting, like easily, and that's always been natural as well. So like for me, it's just something that makes us feel fantastic, and without doing it I would feel terrible. Then spent quite a few years doing yoga. I was a member of Tribe in just up the road from me in Stockbridge, and for a while I was completely hooked on that. And then it was the intervening period between finishing that COVID, that's when I started jiu-jitsu. And that now, absolutely all my training that I do in the gym, whether it's strength training or conditioning training, because I'm doing a lot of more sort of functional training and a lot of cardio. I did a 9.5 mile run this morning. It's everything I do now. I mean, you could look at it from the outside and assume that it's like kind of aesthetic type lifting, but it's all completely geared towards function of like being highly functional within a jiu-jitsu setting. And I think it does pay off, because although I might not be the best practitioner of the sport, there's definitely loads of guys that are way more highly skilled than me. I've got such a really strong SEC background that it makes it very difficult for some guys who are undoubtedly much more technical than I am.
So I thought you were going to say that you're optimizing for like mobility and stuff, basically health-wise, but you said specifically for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but what I would say is it undoubtedly is optimizing my health as well, because like, I mean, resting heart rate's super low, body fat's super low, my diet's like, these days it's really clean, man. But the thing is, none of that makes you feel bad, and all of it makes you feel good.
Yeah. So, you know, I did mention on the show when I was talking about fasting, that you were the one that pushed me over the edge of actually just switching to it, you know, while I was tiptoeing around it for some time, and I've even been to some retreats, you know, experimenting with it. By now it's just something that I do every day, and that's
so easy, mate.
And like, tell me about that. How did you go about it?
I think that sort of like entered the zeitgeist on the internet several years ago, didn't it? And for a while it was like the flavour of the month everyone was talking about was intermittent fasting. And like, I mean, you couldn't go on the internet without reading about it. So like a dipshit, I just did like what everyone else was doing and decided I'll start intermittent fasting. But like, I've never like measured too many of the biomarkers that you could necessarily accurately measure to say how much benefit you're getting from it. And everyone will always argue, like, you could say something's black, someone will say it's white. So what I would say is almost anything I do, my results are anecdotal, but for me, them being anecdotal to me is enough, because like, I'll be the own measure of my own success with those sorts of things. But with intermittent fasting, for me, it's so, especially with like the way that my work is, it's so easy, because I can eat and drink the same thing at the same time every day. So if I'm offshore for 14 or 21 days, I'll eat and I'll drink the same thing at the same time every day for that period of time, and it just like, it really feels like you're just being unbelievably efficient with your engine. And then back home it's super easy as well. I mean, I'll only have water or black coffee until 12, 1, 2 o'clock, depending on what the window is. And like, I just, for someone that's never done it, that sounds really difficult. But as soon as you're 1 or 2 days in, especially if you've got like a reasonable level of self-discipline, it's not just easy, you feel so much better for it. You actually feel like you have more energy from it. You really do. I mean, you do it. You know that, don't you?
Yeah. I just before I respond, how many hours do you do?
Generally speaking, I'll be 16, but sometimes I like 16. To do 16
yes.
hours,
and then in the window you eat what, 2 or 3 meals roughly?
Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, it depends. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's difficult what people will class as a meal. It's different.
Yeah.
I'll eat a lot. What I'll tend to do is have it, eat every 2 hours probably, maybe slightly less, but maybe slightly less than 2 hours. But I'll get a steady dose of calories coming in, and that'll be made up of whatever macros that I sort of feel as though my body needs.
No, so in terms of my experience with it, not only do I feel much better, like I actually enjoy my mornings. I'm a morning person, like I prefer my mornings than my evenings in terms of like productive deep work, whatever. Yeah. Like if I were to choose on my own accord whether to record a podcast or I don't know, read a lot or study or whatever, I would choose the morning rather than evening, and that's different for people. But I also enjoy the morning clarity which comes after those 12-14 hours of fasting.
Absolutely.
And it's not something, I would argue that you could, if you're in tune with your body, you could feel it after one day of fasting already. But because we're so out of tune, because we're so glued to the screens and the noise and, overstimulated essentially, for people, I've kind of managed to convince one guy from work to try it, and by now he's doing it every day. He likes it, but it takes so much effort for people to imagine that you can feel okay, simply because you're trained that the moment you wake up, it's food, and then like.
Dude, I remember growing up though, the adage that you would be told is like, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, evening meal like a pauper. That was like, I remember that, and then you would also get the narrative of breakfast the most important meal of the day, and it's just like, I wonder who it is that's perpetuated that message to like a public domain.
I'm pretty sure it's the food.
Of course it will be, mate. It's just all so wrong. Like,
did you hear that they've inverted the pyramid now? Of food pyramid.
Oh, have they? What did it used to be?
The bottom was like all the corn, carbohydrates and stuff.
Carbohydrate, protein, fat.
At the very top was like the fatty. I mean inverted. That's probably a wrong word. We would have to proper look at it. But they, I think last year, in the United States, obviously, they changed it, right? And
it's crazy,
like, what are you changing? Of course, each to their own. But like, for example, for me, and this is a huge thing. Like, as we were talked earlier about, your kid and the whole phone problem. I was, throughout my childhood, my breakfast would mostly consist of sometimes sweetened, sometimes not, sort of cereals and milk.
Yeah.
That was the breakfast that an average kid was being given. And you have, on all the cereals, you have all the vitamins that are inside, and it's like, there's so much iron and fiber and everything, right? All of that. My parents, it's not like they were maliciously feeding me bad stuff.
No, but they would have it's before the age of information, and people wouldn't necessarily understand, like, there's so much information about everything now that you can get swamped in it, but as well, like, you can come to a reasonable understanding of what the like a sensible approach should be based on what's generally accepted. But that's like, when our parents were younger, that's before a point in time that stuff was. So you took the food companies at face value, and my fucking god, like fat-free yogurt, it's just ludicrous.
Yeah, for sure. But that's my point, right? That even though nowadays there is so much information, one could argue that there is so much information that many people are checked out.
Yeah.
And then you have the other side, which is, I can mention to you something that it really is true and is beneficial for you, such as, let's say, intermittent fasting, if you're trying to get rid of the excess fat on your belly. As you famously said to me, it's like a six-pack all year round.
Of course,
which sold me on the idea. I can say that to a friend in really good, intentions and stuff, but simply because there is so much information, he will just be like, nah, I don't know, man, that's not what I heard, the doctor said otherwise, whatever. you just leave it, right? Like you might type into Google or your ChatGPT, and whatever that agenda there will offer you, exactly.
But you take that as gospel.
Exactly, and you refuse, and so unfortunately, I think we've gone, in terms of trying to figure out what to do, we've gone through absence of information on stuff to so much information that unless you're critically thinking and really dig deeper, you might as well not have any information. You know what I mean?
You can't see the wood for the trees. I agree, and then that's why I think it's sort of, and then a lot of people just don't give a shit either way, so it doesn't even enter their mind to consider whether or not what they're doing is like deeply harming them, like internally, like because they're just polluting their stuff with like food that you couldn't make even if you had a nuclear lab in your back garden. You know what I mean? It's like,
this is the crazy part about and putting my tinfoil hat on now. I think it might just be that people who are so distracted, and there is so much distraction there, as you said, about the Brave New World, and essentially, if I wanted to, I could be constantly consuming whatever information, however trash it might be, 24/7. There is more channels in the TV for you to fit in your day anyway, right?
Of course, right.
So we get into this, I would say, troublesome state where people are so overstimulated that they are so out of touch with themselves that even when they are eating crap, they don't know they're feeling crap because that's the baseline. Because they don't have the time. Like if you've never felt an empty stomach that feels okay, you don't know how that feels. You just know that it's scary to be hungry.
I know,
right?
man. That we've had a similar conversation a bunch of times because like like me and my wife, there is nothing wrong with that, but you're in a state of complete abundance in every aspect possible that people don't have that. And then it would be a real hard lesson for some folk to learn that there is actual there is a situation that could occur in some walk of life where you actually would have real problems.
Oh yeah, I mean, and
then with the abundance of information as well, man. Like I've had this conversation so many times. If I hadn't post-COVID, if I hadn't looked at my work, like the amount of stuff that I have read and consumed and I've worried about, or I've had conversations about, or heated conversations or arguments about, you're talking at least hundreds of hours because you can't avoid it. Like everyone's at that. I could have not looked at my phone or the source of the internet once or read the news once and not had to worry about any of those things, and my life would not be materially different because I wouldn't have noticed the impact of any of the things that had happened. So like it's just
that exposure.
It is, man, and it's trying to unpick like how much of that you let in.
That's really interesting, in terms of the exposure of just consuming as well. Like you have to be your own filter in this age of abundance, in the same way as you're your own filter what you eat.
Of course.
You have to be your own filter of what you feed your mind with.
Yeah.
Now that's actually a curious question for me to ask. How is it at home? Are you the only one fasting, or is your wife also?
No, my wife tends to. We'll tend not to. Yeah. And unless weekends we might go out for brunch or whatever. But
but it's a part.
Generally speaking, because she finds it just as easy as well. And man, nobody's bloody hungry when they wake up. Because you're once you've got that, man, you've got years of that down. It feels like a complete novelty to eat in the morning because there's no need for it. I'm not hungry. My glycogen stores are probably still topped up to the nth degree from whatever I ate just a few hours ago before when I went to bed. I 9.5 miles this morning. I had a litre of water and a black coffee. There wasn't a single point in there where I needed to put any carbs into myself.
Oh, if anything, you feel so great when you're working out empty stomach.
Exactly, because I was probably still topped up, but like there'd be so many people that wouldn't be able to do that without going with a handful of gels in their pocket, and it's like your body's not going to need that for an hour and a bit's worth of exercise.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do it with Julia as well, and it certainly, of course, as anything in terms of family life or just living with your spouse, whoever. It certainly helps, especially at the very beginning if you do it together, simply because like if your schedule is aligned, it's easier for you to stick to your self-discipline while you're developing it than not. But yeah, no, it's the only thing that I've heard, and I don't know, this is something that Julia's been experimenting with, is just apparently for women it might be slightly different during the period time.
Oh, that would make complete
for a week
sense.
or something like that.
Of course.
That you shouldn't. Apparently, women should not. Please check this, guys. This is just like an anecdote that I've heard.
I can absolutely imagine that would have some sort of impact, and that might be a reason to have to consider like fasting. That makes complete sense. But with that, when things are maybe if you're unwell, there might be some benefit to getting something in you. But like on a day-to-day basis, like the human body hasn't changed that much in the last however many millions of years, has it? But like the way that we've adapted to living has, if you imagine like time in the space of a day, however many seconds there are in the day, in the very last 1 second we've gone from being hunter-gatherers to spending so much of our time glued to a bloody phone and sat in front of a computer. Like that's how short a time it is relative to our whole development. And that's how quickly these changes have happened. So the body's not ready for it. So like, I'm still thinking like I've got to go out and like hunt an elk and like steal some blueberries off a fucking farm, man.
Yeah, if anything, I just wanted to point that out as well. I bet you've considered it. Is like, I actually had a live stream at work, funnily enough, about well-being, mental health, well-being stuff. I just presented to people about breathing, cold exposure, and meditation, and I pointed out this idea, which is basically about why fasting feels so great. It's like it's completely natural that the moment you're starving, the moment your body goes into the starving mode, when it's actually starting to burn fat because of the reserve, which fat is supposed to be. It's not there to look whatever, it's there as a reserve fuel essentially. It's no wonder that we feel more like basically awake, more clarity, probably more agile and more powerful. One could argue as well in terms of like a short burst of.
It makes complete sense because that's your body telling you that it's time to go get some food.
Exactly. We would have gone. That's exactly the moment when in winter you grab a spear with a bunch of your mates and for a few hours you just go out there and try to hunt something. Mm-hmm. No wonder. Now we've grown so comfortable in our day and age that this is making you feel uncomfortable.
It's just the relationship with food is just so messed up. It is because it's not like it's the ultra processed foods and stuff that they're made to be so hyper palatable, and they don't necessarily elicit the feeling of fullness, but they elicit the feeling of like enjoyment because they're so scientifically manufactured to elicit the exact responses that make you want more of it. It's such a disservice to humans that they've been manufactured. It's so wrong, man. It really is. And like we don't have too much of that in our diet, to be honest with you. But it's like that's not something that a human body can grow healthy on, like emotionally or physically, I don't think.
Well, I think this is yet again, it seems to me like we're, in all these topics, we're circling back to like fundamental principles. It's like until you really think what food is supposed to do, you will not get that. Like I will say to you that Doritos are made to make sure that you will eat one more.
Of course.
Until you understand what that means in comparison to why if you eat a full steak you will not want a second steak if you're full, until you grok that change, until you understand the fundamental principle of what food is supposed to do to you, you will eat 6 packs of Doritos and you will wonder, why do I want another one?
Of course.
Of course you want another one, because there is no fullness there. This is not supposed to satiate you. This is supposed to provide you with a way to make sure that you come back for more.
Exactly, which is so wrong, man. It's just, highly addictive, and like the way that it's so commercially branded and everything, it's very insidious. But like, that's all been completely intentional, like, hasn't it? It's just such a racket, man, and you see it from the early days of advertising. It's fascinating, but like, you can't believe for a split second that everyone that's been involved in that hasn't known exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
How because I do wonder about your, because you said that you've started your workouts and sort of self-discipline around the age of 16 and stuff. Did you ever smoke? Did you go through the periods of like? I mean, like, being an idiot, or?
Yeah, I had a few years of being an idiot, but like, that's the thing. A guy I used to train with, his mind would always be blown, because we would go out on a Friday night. I would stay out till 3 a.m, but I'd still be in the gym at 9 o'clock on the Saturday. And if I were out again the Saturday night, I'd still be in the gym again on the Sunday morning. Like, it just habit forming, to be honest, mate. But plenty of years of being, like, definitely had a few years of. So probably not for on this conversation. But.
No. But why I'm asking this is I do wonder, because it's not obvious for me that many people in our even in our surroundings, let's say, are aware of these things we've just discussed in terms of like how food affects you.
And that's such a.
And I wonder, how did you come about to consider those things? Like, is it because you come from a family that?
No, I had a really bad diet when I was younger. It was super restrictive, like super restrictive and super unhealthy.
What do you mean?
It just didn't have a good. It wasn't open to trying anything, so it was very restrictive, and did eat a lot of probably processed food. Not like a vast majority, a wide variety of it. It was just super restrictive diet where I would only eat a few different things. But I think that informs a lot of the way that I eat now. I think because then you have the benefit of hindsight, and then when you start doing exercise and you think, how can I maximise the output from the exercise I'm doing? What's all to do with what I'm putting into my body and the exercise I'm doing? Like, those two halves make a whole. And I think that's probably what's informed me in having a healthier diet now. Now I'm in my mid-30s, and for the last sort of 15 years or whatever. But definitely initially I wasn't like that as a kid, and it was my diet wasn't great. So I think like I think the reason that all became much more health focused and was probably to do with maximising the benefit of my training, because that is all to do with how nutritionally complete is your diet.
So you started basically to geek out on
I think so. But I think some of it seems quite obvious, but then like I remember working with a guy years ago, and he didn't know what I meant when I mentioned having a balanced diet, and it wasn't even a concept that he'd ever heard of. And I think most people's idea of a balanced diet, even that's probably off kilter of what a real balanced diet is. But like, to not have even known the term, it does show you that like there's been a disservice to the public, that they've not been made aware of just how polluting some of the stuff that they're putting into their body is. But I do feel like some of it has always been, probably it's from having an interest in it, but in my mind some of it is surely common sense, but maybe it isn't.
Maybe it's not that common.
Yeah.
Like there is this idea that common sense is not that common, and I think that applies to all kinds of stuff. We've talked about diet here, and maybe exercising or maybe spending time on your screen. It's not obvious for me that for the majority of people it's a common thing to think about. Unfortunately, I think because of all the distractions, many of us simply fall into a trap of following the crowd or doing certain motions throughout the day.
Sure.
And you don't realize that 3 years have passed, and you've put on 10 kilograms. You're not feeling your best. Maybe it's just.
And that's a tough hill to climb, then, man. That's the thing. I've got so many mates that say to me, "I'm so lucky because I'll just go out and do my thing and I stick to it." And it's like there's no luck involved, but I couldn't not do it. But I do, I completely understand if you don't have those characteristics and that isn't the way that you operate, it must be a fucking nightmare, man, to put yourself in the position that you're saying, right, I'm upheaving my life. I'm not going to, be massively overweight, leading an unhealthy life with a vape in my hand and my phone in the other, and I'm going to completely upend that and navigate the world completely differently. That is an insurmountable task for most people to ever do, I think.
Well, yeah, to that point, you just made me think that in some ways we're the lucky ones that we've started on exercises and habits, let's say, positive habits, early on, that it was still not because there was no other way.
Yeah.
While what I'm observing, for example, among my some of my mates my age, right? Like many of us are now getting married or have been in a job for a few years' time, so time is catching up. What I mean, and you can see while I don't see you on the day-to-day basis, I can see over the 5-year period whether or not what you do on the day-to-day basis made you better or worse. And I agree with you completely that it's really difficult. I can imagine, I've not been there, but it's probably one of the hardest things you will do in life, to realize that you've gone the wrong way for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And a meal deal. What is a meal deal? Majority of people at my office eat a meal deal.
Mate, I've never had a meal deal,
What is a meal deal? There's no deal in it, and there's no meal.
There's Reddit pages about meal deals. That's how bad it is, mate.
The not so funny thing about it is one meal deal is not going to do much to you.
No.
2 meal deals, not really. A week of meal deals, not really. But 2 years into this job, I have at least 3 people in my mind
every day
that changed their way of being because of this. And I don't know what they do after work, but I know what they eat during lunch. And that's what I mean. It's like those people, when I will talk with someone like that, sometimes the voice I hear is like, oh yeah, but it's so easy for you. And I agree, it's not really that easy, but it's easier than allowing yourself to go so low and then trying to do that.
Completely, mate. Absolutely. I think you've said it perfectly, and yeah, I know, and I think that kind of is the fallback a lot of the time. But there's nothing in this world will ever replace hard work, and I think in a physical sense, when it comes to putting yourself on the line time and time again to physically perform, there is actually, arguably there's some kind of coming this way, but there isn't actually anything that you can put in place of that. It's all you can do is the reps, or whether it's running, weightlifting, swimming, jiu-jitsu, yoga, whatever the fuck it is, man. Nothing can take the place of that, and if you've never done it, you don't understand the value of it. Yeah, no, and switching to one major topic I wanted to discuss with you, and then we'll close it off and have a little chat on our own in the private setting. Feel free not to respond as well, but I am quite curious. It's have you ever had, and if so, what? Some crazy or dangerous or something like that situation as part of your job? Because, when I think of an oil rig work, I think of badass crazy stuff. I'll be honest with you, mate. I think that's the thing with this industry. The potential of something going wrong is utterly catastrophic, because you're in such a potentially, and this is the word that is always used, it is a potentially hazardous environment innately, because there's the risk of explosion, there's the risk of fire, and you're isolated. but it's incumbent on anyone that operates one of these things and anyone that's part of a team that operates one of these installations is to mitigate against that. So, super boring answer to your question, mate, but no, I've not. I have been, mate. I've been super safe. And like part of my job, I worked within technical safety for a number of years within the industry, and that really was incumbent on me because I led the team that were responsible for making sure all technical safety systems were safe on an asset that produced 5% of the UK's gas. So it was enormous. Like, and if anything had gone wrong, I mean, that's the place that it could go really wrong. But no is the answer to the question. I haven't. That's not saying that I don't know people that haven't been in situations that have been very bad, but I've never been exposed to them, thankfully.
Sure, no, that's wonderful, and I understand that it's exactly because there's so many risks. If anything were to go wrong, so much could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
That there is so much
built in.
Yeah, ways to make sure that it doesn't.
Of course.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And no, fair play. I mean, if anything, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I was just I wanted to ask that earlier, and then it popped into my head again. Okay, so Neil, let's do it like this. I always invite my guests to share at the end of the show something that maybe we've not talked about before, maybe a topic that you'd like to still discuss, or maybe there is something that you'd like to leave our audience with, which we've not mentioned. You know, maybe there is a certain motto that you live by, or a book that you would suggest people read, or maybe if a topic, a theme, whatever. You know, it can be anything. I've had someone at some point literally say hi to their mom. So like, we can have a discussion about it, or you can just leave us with something else.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of pieces of advice that have sort of stuck with me. One was a guy that taught me throughout my apprenticeship, Graham. He was such a positive influence on my life, and he's such a really good guy, and he was sort of archetypal alpha male, like really good at organising guys, giving you sound advice and whatever. And it always stuck with me because he really was someone that like walked the walk when he said he was gonna. And he always said, there's two types of people, Neil. There's people who do and people that don't. And it kind of sticks with me because I feel like more and more as you get exposed to situations, you can either do the thing or not do the thing. And if you don't do the thing, that's fine. But the only person that you're potentially letting down is yourself, ultimately. And if you decide you're gonna, the worst thing that can happen is that you might not manage it, but at least you've given it a go. And that sort of sticks with me. And then the other one that I always think when I'm in, like, if I'm in the middle of someone trying to fucking kill me in a jiu-jitsu role, if I'm in a really tough situation at work, if I'm half the world away and I'm thinking I would just love to be home, is Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. He went through a load of shit, man. You could read about it. It's crazy. A while ago, and then it all culminated on top of all the terrible stuff. It culminated with him like developing cancer in the middle of a tour and all this. But they did this show in the catacombs in Paris, like the underground cellars are built out of old skeletons and bones and skulls and things. It's amazing. But there's a little excerpt of him just at the start of the song. One of the songs, it's like the second last one. It's amazing, but you just hear him really quietly saying, when you're going through hell, keep going. And it always sticks with me, and I think it all the time of him. Like, I repeat it to myself all the time, every day, anytime there's a difficult situation. And I think it's really worthwhile advice because, like, a lot of people don't keep going, and that's where, like, growth kind of stops. Yeah.
I appreciate that, thank you. And yeah, it's interesting, you know, just the one thought that popped into my head in terms of what you said earlier about there are people that do and that don't, is also over time, as you live with other people, around other people, you can observe whether people do or whether they don't, and that can be a good indicator for you as a person whether those are people for you or not, you know, regardless of the circumstances.
Of course.
And stuff. So,
and you need everyone for the world to go round as well, and that's not a criticism of anyone's idea on anything, but that is a motto that I can navigate and I can take value from myself in how I like to adapt to situations and deal with them.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for you guys for tuning in, and yeah, I hope this was something of interest to you. It was of interest to me, and in my selfish entertainment I invited you to participate. Yeah, thank you so much, and
great.
Thanks, brother.
Nice one. Thanks for listening, man. Cool.